Rotarians. I am thrilled to be here. I am humbled to be here, and I really I appreciate Leanne's introduction. And I have to tell you, I am incredibly touched. I didn't know about the book donation, and I am incredibly touched by that. That is the most lovely thing anybody has ever done for me as a speaker. I do a lot of speaking. Nobody's ever donated a book to a school library before. I'm going to start demanding it. So, I'm not kidding. I think I'm actually going to start demanding it. All right, here we go. So I'm going to talk with you guys about generative AI, and I want to tell you that at the end of this, there's going to be a QR code and a link. And so if you want the slides to look at later on your own, you've got those. So if you see something that sparks your interest, don't worry about digging a pen out of your pocket or your purse. You'll be able to get these at the end. And my email address will be here also. And I welcome any of you to call or email me over at the law school. I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody about this. My colleagues would be thrilled for me to have other people to talk to for a while. They've heard everything I have to say, and they're ready to move on. All right, here we go. So I like to give sort of my orientation or my perspective on generative AI first, because I enter it with a particular view. First of all, generative AI is a tool, right? It's like a hammer. A hammer is a tool. If I need to hang up a picture, a hammer is what I need. If I need something to hold in my hand while I have a argument with my husband, hammer is probably not the tool that I want if I want to stay married. And so generative AI is also a tool. There are things it's exceptionally good for and things it's just really inappropriate for. No tool, therefore, is categorically good or bad. They're just tools. Tools are most effective in the hands of the skilled. You can give me all of the materials and all of the tools needed to build a house, and at the end of the day, you will still have a stack of tools and materials to build a house. You will not have a house. So the tools, AI is a tool that is best used in the hands of people who are, first of all, skilled in whatever area it is that they're using it for. If you're a lawyer, you've got to bring your legal training to it. If you're an accountant, if you are an administrative executive, whatever it is you do, your expertise is still needed. And then finally, I believe and have believed, I have been developing technology tools and using technology in legal education since I started in 1997, when we had just started using email in law schools. And so, in fact, when I went to law school at Baylor, we didn't have email. We didn't have university email. We had a little box people put messages in. And so I have always believed and continue to believe with AI that the highest and the best use of technology is to make things more efficient for us so that we have more time to do the things that make us human, to build relationships, to serve one another, to be in conversation with one another. So I don't believe that technology should ever take the place of the things that make us human. I think it should augment the things that make us human and give us more time. And in my view, and I talked to a lot of lawyers about this, and I talked to a lot of business organizations about this. In my view, the idea is to take you back to a time when you had more time for relationships, to move you back in time for when you had time to sit down and have a conversation and develop rapport with people. And I think this does this very well. And I've experienced it with my own students. This has given me a lot more time to just go eyeball to eyeball with my own students one-on-one, and I really value that. All right, so I'm going to talk about two things, and I'm really going to gloss over both of them pretty quickly and hit the high points just to give you a sense of the importance of both of them. And the first one is basic generative AI literacy, and the second one is prompt architecture. What was her name again?
Ashley.
Ashley. I'm really enjoying Ashley because Ashley sits here and nods. I've always got at least one nodder in my classes that let me know if things are going okay. And I'm the nodder. Like at meetings, I'm always the nodder because I want people to know it's all right. It's all, keep going, keep going. So Ashley, keep nodding. I appreciate it. If Ashley stops nodding, I'll know I need to retool and move forward. So Ashley's my barometer here. Okay, so basic generative AI literacy. Now, this is a talk that I usually give. This is an hour to an hour and a half long talk that I usually give on just this topic. I'm going to do it in 4 slides. So ChatGPT is a large language model, and I'm going to talk about ChatGPT because it's the one that most of us have heard about. So GPT, all of the ones that you may or may not have heard about are GPTs, not just ChatGPT. GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Generative means that it generates content. It doesn't go fetch content. It doesn't retrieve it. It's not like Google in that way. It generates content, and it does that by predicting the next word in a sequence. And I'll tell you in just a minute how it does that. Pre-trained means it has had access to a large corpus of data across a period of time, and that it uses that large corpus of data in order to encode and decode language. Encoding means it takes it in to learn how language works, much like the way you learned how to speak. And if you've learned a second or third or fourth language later in life, this is probably how you learn to do that also. But for sure, this is how native speakers learn to speak. They observe the language, pick up patterns, and then they decode that by predicting how to use the language. And so that's what this does. And then the transformer is that system of encoders and decoders. So GPTs have read in their pre-training, and read isn't really the word, but they've read basically everything on the internet. Not really, but essentially everything on the internet. And so you see, from that slide that there are a lot of places that have some very serious and complex knowledge, and then there's some places that we don't log into, most of us, or certainly we don't admit to it in polite company. And so there's a lot of, and so I show you that just to remind you that there's a lot of stuff on the internet, not just the places that you and your spouse and your children and your parents go, but places that everybody goes. Not everybody, but lots of people go. So there's a lot out there that it has read and been familiar with. It knows things that you don't want to know, And so having observed and processed all that language, it predicts content. It doesn't retrieve content. And so, for example, if I give it a prompt, the King of England sits on A, it knows to fill that in with what? Throne, right? Now, you guys didn't study that. I didn't give you materials in advance. You learned it the same way that GPT learned it, which is just observing how language works together and what words seem to appear in proximity to what other words. Now, it's true that the King of England, for example, does sit on a throne. But he doesn't always sit on a throne, right? Sometimes he just sits on a chair. Sometimes he might sit on I like to think that maybe somewhere in the castle, he's got a recliner, a really comfy chair, because that sounds like a horrible job. And so it is true that the words king and throne appear in proximity together throughout our language. That doesn't make it true that he's always sitting on a throne, right? Another prompt might be, how are you? If I ask any of you, how are you? I can predict a lot of different answers that are all equally good predictions. You might say, I'm fine, how are you? You might say, I'm well today. You might say, I'm enjoying this nice weather. You might say, I enjoyed my lunch. How did you enjoy your lunch? Those are all predictable responses. And they're all pretty much equally predictable. And so they're all correct in the sense that they're all good predictable responses. Now, somebody I might ask, how are you? And we've all got one person we know like this, and it's, well, my sciatica's acting up. And, the dog got out, and I'm going to have to fix that fence over the weekend, and the car is making a knocking sound. And so that response may be the true response, the accurate response, but that's not the predictable response. That's not what I would what I would think is statistically likely to be a response asked of any person that I chose at random. And so it is, predictable responses are true in that they are statistically verifiably predictable, but they're not true in the sense of they are actually reflect objective truth and reality in that moment, okay? So this is designed to generate things that are statistically verifiable as predictable responses. That doesn't mean they're the answer to the question. So it doesn't understand truth and reliability. It basically makes up content based on what's statistically likely. And so you use it for things that need to sound correct, not for things that need to be correct. Anything you use it for, I know that's but listen, we're about to find out there's a lot more in our daily lives that just needs to sound right. It doesn't need to be right. And so you use it for things that need to sound correct, but that you can provide the actual truth for, or the actual accurate information for. And so you don't use it for anything that needs to be verifiably true, accurate, or reliable, only for maybe the wording of it. And so you might have heard about hallucinations. That's what software engineers who have developed this technology call it. When I get an answer wrong, it's just incorrect. In the legal industry, it's called malpractice. Apparently, if you're a software engineer, it's a hallucination, which, I think there's a lot about this that speaks to the power of language to create reality, and that's one of them. I think it's cute that they came up with a cute little, it's a hallucination, it's fun. I would love that. I would love that. Every time I'm wrong, go, I was hallucinating. I don't know that the law school would enjoy that either, but anyway. So what is it good for? It's really good for brainstorming. I asked it to make a picture for me of a brainstorm, and that's what it gave me. So it's good for brainstorming because it has seen all of the ideas out there. And so if you ask it for example, give me a good idea for next week's catered Rotary lunch. What would a good menu be for April? It'll give you some great ideas. Tell it, I'm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I want to feature local seafood. What should the menu have on it? It'll give you some great ideas. It's good for drafting by genre because it has observed and processed lots of language. One of the things that computers are very good at is sorting things into categories. And so it's very good at understanding the difference between a short story and a novel and an essay and an email and a letter. It's very good at understanding a personal letter versus a business letter versus, let's say, a legal demand letter. And so it's very good at genres. It's very good at taking information that you've already drafted one way and then repurposing it in another way. It's excellent for that. And that's a great use of it because there are lots of times where we have something that we've written or that we've got available to us and we just need it in another form, right? And so this does that really well. It's also good for bespoke revision. It can learn your writing style if you provide it enough of your own writing, and it will make suggestions to you about what are the kinds of things you can work on in your writing, and then it can develop sort of a little, we call it a bot. It can develop its own little bot that just looks for those things that you need to improve upon, and you can just upload your stuff and say, using what you know about my writing, make this avoid the common writing errors that I make. And it will do that very, very well. So, but you have to know how to talk to it. It's a little like a genie in a bottle. Y'all know that joke about the guy who ends up a 2x4 in a condo in Florida? Y'all know that one? Guy gets 3 wishes, genie in a bottle, and the last wish he asked for is, he said he always wanted to be a stud. And so he ends up a 2x4 in a condo in Florida. This is a little bit like that. Like, you got to know how to talk to it. It'll give you what you ask for, but you got to know how to talk to it. And so that gets me to my second topic, which we're going to go through very quickly because there's a lot of detail that you don't want to worry your heads with right now. But again, I encourage you to, you're welcome to call me, come visit me in the law school, take me to lunch, I'll take you to lunch, and we'll talk about prompt architecture. Prompt architecture is what I call the method of basically talking to the GPT. And so I use what I call a rhetorical situation scaffold. The rhetorical situation is a way of thinking about writing. It's what I call power steering for writers. You think about your author, who it is that you are as the author, what you bring to the table, who is your audience, what is the topic, what is the purpose of the writing, the genre of the writing, and the exigence. Why are you writing it now? What's the purpose right now? And so each part of the rhetorical situation becomes a module on the scaffold. What this means is, if you'll just identify those 6 pieces of information, or just the first 3, author, audience, and topic, and you'll make sure that when you talk to ChatGPT, you tell it those things. I am an accountant. I am writing a letter to a client to explain, whatever, to explain new tax regulations that will impact their business. And so if you'll put that into a prompt, that'll get you a pretty good answer. If you include all 6 pieces of information, so the author, the audience, the genre, the subject, the exigence, and then the purpose, if you include all 6 of those, you get a really nice answer. If you really want to turbocharge your use of this technology, then you can use a comprehensive prompt architecture module where each of those modules contains individual variables. And this is the part where I want you to just let your minds float a little bit right here. I don't want you to drill down into the weeds on this. But each one of these can have specifics. So for example, if I wanted an audience module, if I really wanted to get great results from the GPT, I would identify aspects of each one of those modules. So for example, this is an audience module. And so I might have demographics, professional background, aspirations, decision triggers, etc. And then I would take each of the modules, which each of those variables, I'd stack them up. I'd just list them, cut and paste, and then I'd put those into ChatGPT, and then I'll execute it with this prompt. And I can use this prompt every time without changing anything, and it will pull from those stacks that I gave it. It'll pull that information from those stacks automatically and plug it in there. And one way to make this a little bit easier is, because coming up with all those individual things is hard, so I can take the things that I want and I can tell ChatGPT, please fill in these fields for each variable using the attached biography. So I don't have to isolate each of those things. I can just take somebody's online biography and say, pull from this biography each of these things for me. And so I did it with my biography on the LSU website, and that's what it pulled. You don't need to read it. I know you can't read it, or I can't read it from here. So what it did is it pulled all that information from my biography. And so it took a minute to do that. And so once I've decided what the variables are, getting that populated, GPT can do that for me. Then I take that, I put it into the prompt along with the information from all those other modules, and then I can say, acting as author, please draft genre to audience about subject. And it's going to take all of that information I had and pull it into that and then spit out my answer. And so because the technology has processed and read information all across the internet, the more detail you can give it in the prompt, the better the results are going to be, because it's going to narrow down from everything it's read and go, okay, I want just things that would appeal to a law professor. And it's going to, womp down on that. And it's going to narrow the field, and I'm less likely to get hallucinations, and I'm less likely to get a bunch of irrelevant, just sort of, junk and general things. And so I use that prompt without I don't change that at all. All I do is I change the modules based on what I'm doing. And then I have a library. This is based on just a spreadsheet, where I have a library that has all of those things put together, so that once I've got a biography for Tracy Norton from the LSU website, I just take that and I put it in my spreadsheet, and then the next time I have to write something to Tracy Norton, now I just go cut and paste that. And now I've got this library that I'm building over time each time I use ChatGPT, so that every time I use ChatGPT, I'm not just using it for that task, but I'm building my library so that I get more and more and more and more efficient. And so now I've got time. This takes a lot of knucklehead stuff off of my desk. I use this to conglomerate, to coalesce a lot of information about my students, so that I can think about the best way to give individual student feedback that they will be receptive to, which is something I never believed I would have time to do in my lifetime. And it's amazing. So this is just a way of using it. The takeaway from this is, you need to understand that it's a language predictor machine. Right? It's not magic. It doesn't know everything. It doesn't actually know anything. And that you're going to get the best results the more specific detail you can give it about what you need. And so my suggestion is always keep track of the prompts that you use that work. Whoops. And then if you have any questions, again, please feel free to reach out. That's the QR code for my slides. And if you don't use QR codes, that's the link. You just copy that link and you can go to my slides. Thank you very much for having me today. Oh, okay. We have time for a couple questions. Yes, ma'am.
Take us through, you didn't wake up being a savant on AI. How did you jump in the pool? How did you start with
Well, first of all, I like to say that in the land of the blind, the one-eyed gal is queen here. I'm an expert because nobody knows anything about this. And so I've always been interested in technology, like I said, to make time for other things. I heard about this when it first came out in November 22. I had been aware that there was technology that could do things like this. I'd been aware of it for about 10 years. But when it became publicly available for free, I was like, well, let me see. And so I just jumped in. I just started asking it questions. I always tell people, if you haven't used it at all, just Google ChatGPT. It'll take you there. You can set up a free account. You don't have to give it any personal information. Set up a free account and just say, I don't know what you are. What can you do for me? And just start there. Just ask it any question. And so I started from there and just kept going and just kept asking it to do things and seeing what it could figure out. And that gave me a sense of sort of what it did and what it didn't do. And then I got curious about, okay, well, what is the technology sort of, what's under the hood? And so I know just enough to be helpful. I don't even quite know enough to be dangerous, so I'm good right now. Yeah. Just curiosity is your best tool.
So, this might answer my question last time, but and I also thank you so much for your presentation. But for bespoke and revision, do you have an account in ChatGPT? That way it picks up how you speak over time?
So I have a paid account, and the paid accounts have what they call memory to them, which means it remembers everything I've ever asked it, everything I've ever uploaded to it. Whereas the free account does not. The free account, it just wakes up in a new world every day. And so, so it gets a sense, but I've also uploaded a lot of my writing to it because I want it to know how I usually write, so it can write like me. So, yeah, you just upload a lot of your stuff. Okay, I think that's the last question but I'm happy to stick around.